We would like to welcome you to our session, the Coaching Continuum Overview. This is just an overview, but if you wanted to hear additional information about coaching, we do offer a coaching basics course that we offer at the EC Conference, at Summer Institute, and also in each region of the state. So we're very happy that you joined us today, and let me introduce ourselves. I am Carol Moffitt. I am a personnel development consultant with the Exceptional Children's Division at the Department of Public Instruction, and we're just really happy to get to spend some time with you today. Just want to give you a little bit of my background as far as how it relates to the topic today, which is the coaching continuum and coaching, the topic of coaching. So in my previous role in a district, I was an EC math specialist, and I coached the EC teachers in my district. Also had the great fortune of joining the work with the North Carolina State Improvement Project, which my LEA was a partner with, and also got to participate in a more in-depth study of coaching through that work, as well as a coaching collaborative site, and got to have some intense coaching and instruction in PD from Dr. Marcy Rock from UNC Greensboro, who is an expert on coaching. And then in my role at the Department of Public Instruction, I am part of the coaching team, and we coach instructors in the field and provide the coaching basics professional development that I spoke of earlier, along with my colleague.
Hi, my name is Laura Marsden. I'm a literacy consultant for the Western region and work alongside Carol in the coaching work and other work in the EC division, specifically with the program improvement and professional development section. And we collaborate and support the work of coaching across the state. So this is one of many years in working with Carol and the team and Dr. Marcy Rock on collaborating on this work, and we're excited to bring this professional development to you. So my coaching background, I've worked in a school system in the Western region for a number of years and was an instructional coach there for the EC population across the district, and worked for a number of years in that capacity, as well as a program specialist and a classroom teacher. So Carol and I bring a lot of experience and shared passion for the work, and we're excited to share with you an overview of the coaching continuum. So what you'll need to know in being active learners in this platform of learning virtually is to access the participant handouts, which were emailed to you. If you've registered for the course, you received the link for this session, as well as a link to a Google folder with the handouts. So you have within that folder the participant note pages, as well as a couple of handouts that will be referenced as we progress through our time together. So you will see some icons. The 4 icons that you see at the top of the page will appear from time to time. Those are a signal to you to activate prior knowledge, thinking, and to engage in some opportunity to think about content that's being shared. Then you'll also see, as indicated on the bottom right side of your screen, 2 icons, a thinking bubble and a pen. So that is an indicator to you that we're going to ask you to interact. So you're going to think and interact with content from the session and with your participant handouts. So those are some visual reminders of what you'll see as we progress through our learning opportunities together.
Okay, so now we're going to look at our course goals for our learning together today. And our first goal that you see is that we're going to really look at and examine implementation science and the benefits of coaching, and to just kind of set you up with that. And then we'll also look at establishing an understanding of the coaching continuum, which of course is the title of the session today. So on our first goal, examining that implementation science and the benefits of coaching, we're going to dive into that a little bit more. And on this one, we're going to first talk about, how did we get here? Jim Knight, who is referenced on this slide, talks about the abandoned attempt attack cycle. And so I'm going to explain a little bit about what he's talking about right there. And what he's talking about is sometimes we, in districts, in schools, in in other areas of professional life, things are brought into play, like let's say a new program or instructional practice is selected, right? And then maybe it is brought to the teachers. They possibly might have had some professional development on whatever it is they're wanting to try, or maybe they just had a few. They got materials, but they didn't have they didn't have complete set of materials. Maybe they just had something that was left over from another time that was being used. Maybe the expectations were really low, or the expectations on how to use were not clear. And then what happens is the teachers will try it. That's the attempt part, and then they'll have barriers. They'll have struggles. They'll get frustrated, and they'll start then complaining about how this was going on, and maybe they were struggling. Maybe they didn't have support at the district level, but anyway, they were attacking it basically, or they weren't being supported because of multiple reasons there could be. And then what happens is in a couple of years, sometimes you've probably been in the situation too. The district sometimes then just abandons that implementation, whatever that particular thing was. And so that's what Jim Knight is talking about right there. And so what we want you to do is, and I'm going to share one example from my experience of this attempt to abandon attack cycle. I remember in a district, when I was teaching in a district, and I came in and took a job, and I came in and there were materials sitting on the bookshelves. And I asked other people in the building about the materials, and they said, well, that was really meant for this group of people. I think this was really for speech language pathologists, and really it wasn't really helpful to me as a teacher. And so I kind of looked at it and kind of dug the materials out and looked at that and realized it was a great reading program that would really help struggling readers. I had not had the training, the other teacher had, but because the other teacher hadn't received the support with coaching and follow up after the professional development, she wasn't able to see the connection or make the connection on that it was appropriate for her students. So what I'd like for you to do, and many of you probably maybe while I was talking was thinking of a time that this maybe had happened in your district where something was started and then people kind of complained about it, and then the initiative or program was dropped. So if you will, we're going to hit this timer, and we're going to give you 1 minute to think about a situation that you've experienced. And the question's at the bottom of the screen. Think about a time you've experienced with this abandoned cycle in your school or district. All right, so time's up. I'm hoping that you thought back about that. Hopefully, maybe you've never experienced this. But before we turn to the next slide, I do want to kind of say we will have a timer every once in a while. If you wanted to some of these we're just going to ask you to think about, some of these we'll ask you to write about, but this one was just a thinking. And just a reminder that you do have those participant notes and the picture of the slide so that you can capture anything that connects to you. What we do know about adult learning theory is connecting to your prior experience, just like with your students. So we want to give you that opportunity. We're ready to go on to the next slide. And how in the world can we kind of prevent this abandoned cycle that we just talked about and Jim Knight talked about on the previous slide? One of the ways that we can do that is by thinking about and looking at the implementation stages. What we know is that a program, first of all, or any initiative that you start, has to really fit what the need is. So if you'll see the circle at the top, exploration, and under that you have a box that kind of describes that part of the implementation stage. So in that one, you're really kind of assessing what your needs are because you can select something, but if it's not going to meet your needs, we know that you're setting up your district or yourselves for that not to be successful. So then you've decided what the needs are, then you're going to look at interventions that will meet those needs. You'll see the next bullet is talking about considering implementation drivers, and we'll talk about that in more detail on the next slide. And then you're going to see, does it fit? Does it have a fit for what our needs are? Then, and you can stay in that exploration phase for a year, just trying to figure out what you should do, and that's called exploration. Our next phase is called installation. And in that one, you're really getting your resources together. You're preparing the structure and the organization that will support the installation of this new implementation. Then you're going to prepare implementation drivers. Again, we'll talk about that on the next slide. And then you're going to be importantly doing one of those important things, which is you're preparing your staff for this implementation. And you'll stay there for a while. And you notice the arrow at the bottom is 2 to 4 years. So there's not a set, you stay at this one this long or this many years. The important thing is accomplishing what is intended in each of the stages. The next one is the initial implementation. And in that one, you're really looking at, okay, we had the drivers in place, but now we might need to adjust some of those drivers. We're going to really look at the change. We're going to have systems in place and looking at our data as we're doing that. And then many of you are familiar with improvement cycles, like most of you do with your school improvement teams, whether it's TIPS or if it's PSA, Plan, Do, Study, Act. And that is, again, where you're just getting started, that initial implementation. Finally, you will get to full implementation. In full implementation, you're really looking at and you're managing those implementation drivers. You're looking at fidelity. Is it being delivered? And are you getting the outcomes that you desired? And then again, you're really looking at improving that fidelity and improving outcomes. And as we know, improving outcomes for students is what we're all about. So what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to just, again, think about that it takes years for an implementation to get to full implementation of the stages of implementation. Most of the time, we haven't spent the time that we needed, and that's why things get abandoned. I want to give you 1 minute to think about, um, and I want you to place a star on one of these circles: exploration, installation, initial implementation, and full implementation at wherever your system or your school is as it relates to coaching. So give you a second to do that in your participant notes. You'll have this picture in your notes, and you can just put a star on where you think that your district or school is in the area of coaching. Okay? I think you've had time, but if you've not had enough time there, since this is recorded, you could just hit pause on us and give yourself a little more time. But we're going to look on the next slide, we're going to look at the implementation drivers that we talked about on the previous slide. And you'll see what we want to have on the, it's a triangle. Notice that you have on the left competency drivers in the blue, and on the right the organization drivers, and then the bottom leadership drivers. This triangle, if we were thinking this was a real structure, if it didn't have that base and if it didn't have that sides, it would kind of collapse. And so all of the areas are important. The one that we want to focus on today is we want to focus on the left side of this triangle. Those are the competency drivers. And you'll notice starting from the bottom left going up, we have selection. It's really key that you are making a selection process. You want to think about who is it that would be qualified to implement whatever initiative it is that you're starting out with. Once you've made the selection, obviously when you're starting something new, you don't want to select naysayers or people that are not willing to try new things. So that would be in there. Also, if you have a teacher that's really particular weak in math, you wouldn't say, would you please be one of my early adopters and implementers with this new math thing? You want to think about all of these factors when you're making selection. Next up to the left is training. Once you've made the selection, you then want to give them the appropriate training. A lot of times we're asked to do things, but nobody has provided professional development for us to do that. So that is another critical piece. And then what our topic is on today, on the top left, is coaching. And so what we know is that we need to provide coaching. Teachers learn and other professionals learn in a professional development setting, but they don't learn everything they need to know. They need to have that support in coaching that is provided in the classroom. And this is the work of Bloss and Vixen. And again, this is, and if Laura, if we could go back to the other slide just for a second, I wanted to mention to you there is a website listed on the bottom of that, which is the implementation FPQ, which is an implementation hub at UNC. And that is a link where you can go to find out more about implementation stages and implementation drivers. All right, Laura, if we go back to the next slide. Also, we have a course called All Leaders Know and Understand and Support Evidence-Based Practices, where we help administrators and teacher leaders look at the implementation science and how it improves outcomes for our students. So on our next slide, what we're looking at is we're going to look at some data that talks about what the research says about coaching. And so on this slide, this is some just foundational research done by Joyce and Showers in 2002. And then also Vixen and Dean and many others have put it into this chart right here. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at, first I want you to look at the top where it says outcomes. And it says this is showing the percent of teachers or professionals who demonstrate knowledge, who demonstrate increase in knowledge, an increase in their skill demonstration, and an increase in use of that in their classroom. On the left-hand side, where it has training components, you see listed parts of a training, theory and discussion. Then go across. Theory and discussion will increase a teacher or professional's knowledge by 10%. It'll increase their skill demonstration by only 5%. But for transfer to the classroom and to use it in the classroom, just theory and discussion will only net us 0% gain and use in the classroom. That's not very good. So let's keep going. When we get to the left-hand side again, demonstration in the training, that increases a teacher's knowledge by 30%, their skill demonstration by 20%, so we're making a little bit of gain, but then the classroom is still 0% use in the classroom if we are only given those things, theory and discussion and demonstration and training. Now, on the left-hand side again, when we add practice and feedback in a training, I know some of you come to trainings and you get frustrated because the instructor asks you to do something and to try it out and to get some feedback. But when you look at this data, you're going to understand why. That increases the teacher's knowledge by 60%. It increases their skill demonstration by 60%. And finally, we have a little trickle down to the classroom, and it's used in the classroom 5%. So that's beneficial and is great when we add that to our professional developments. But now, finally, when we get to that bottom, coaching in the classroom, that's where you're trying something new out at, right? That's where it's the rubber's meeting the road. If you have coaching in the classroom after professional development, having all the other things above that, It increases the teacher's knowledge by 95%. Wow, what a difference. Then it increases their skill demonstration by 95%. But here is the big daddy of them all. Finally, we have moved the needle in the classroom. Now, what they've learned in the professional development, they are now using in the classroom 95%. I remember the first time that I saw this slide, Dr. Rock, in a session that I had with Dr. Marcy Rock. And I came away from there wanting to, like, I cannot believe that I had not seen this before. And I could not believe that others just hadn't talked to me about that. So we have a timer here for 3 minutes, and we've got some questions at the end. Who would you like to share this information with? I know when I saw it the first time, I had a list of people that I wanted to share that with. The other question is, what might be your next step to build a shared understanding of implementation science and coaching? And then finally, how will this information support a culture of coaching, maybe in your building or your district? So we're going to give you time to think and then write in your participant notes the answers to these questions. Okay, you have about 7 seconds left. If you need more time, you can certainly pause here, spend some time thinking through your questions a little bit more.
Thank you, Carol. So we're going to move into our next learning outcome or objective here, looking at establishing an understanding of the coaching continuum. So that's what we've come here for. So we wanted to set up kind of the why. So we just walked you through the why behind the coaching continuum, why it's important to establish that. Joyce and Shara's research is pretty important and compelling to really have a strong conversation around our climate and our culture and building a vision for our coaching practice. So we're going to walk through now the 4 components of the coaching continuum. And we're going to see kind of a big picture view. Kind of, we're going to see this from kind of 30,000 feet. And like Carol mentioned earlier, we can take these components down to more of the granular level in our Coaching Basics PD. But we're giving you just that kind of 30,000 feet view of the continuum and giving you an opportunity to get an overview. So we're going to start with study of theory and practice, and it moves through, but it's not linear. It looks linear in this graphic, but it really is something that doesn't have a distinct start and end place. It really does move depending on the need in and out of these components. So there's a question you see there on the screen: which do you predominantly use, and how many of the 4 components do you engage with? So think about that as I described just briefly the 4 components, and then we're going to unpack those for you. So study of theory of best practice, that's really getting into some of the research around either theory of coaching or the practice of an initiative or program, looking at peer observations of a best practice or innovation. And then one-on-one coaching, where a coach and a coachee come together and you work side by side. Or it could have group coaching being where peers come together and coach one another. So there's 4 components: study of theory and practice, peer observation of best practice, one-on-one coaching, and group coaching. So looking more so at study of theory and practice, we're going to kind of dive in and unpack that just a little. So I want you to take a moment and think about what are your experiences with studying best practices, and or having teachers that you coach to study best practice as part of coaching. So this was something, I'd received PD on instructional coaching. I had worked as an instructional coach, and this was a piece of the practice when I started working 5 years ago with Dr. Rock in this work around the coaching work in PIPD. Was something that it was like a light bulb moment for me, where I realized, wait, study of theory and practice, really diving deeper, going beyond and extending our learning past that initial PD opportunity. So think about beyond an initial PD opportunity, do you engage yourself or others in the study of either theory or practice? So kind of keep that thought in mind as we kind of walk through what that could look like. So when you unpack that definition, you're really looking, as what the researchers outlined, 20 to 30 hours of study. Complex concepts or learning could take more. Teachers should experience or expect some discomfort in that moment, because you're learning something new, or you may be challenging some previous ideas or learning that may have some new growth opportunities. There's always that clear emphasis on school improvement and student success. So that is kind of the outline of study of theory and practice, the timeline it takes, some of that emotional kind of component, the struggle, and then always that clear emphasis and outcome of it's all for increased student outcomes. And then a way to kind of further our understanding of these concepts, there's a great resource for you, inearcoaching.com, which is built by Dr. Rock and a team of research students at the time that put together these modules and really help to unpack the components of the continuum. So that's another resource that you can engage and extend your learning past this session and can develop and add to those 20 to 30 hours of theory and study of theory and practice. So that's an opportunity for you to be sure to jot that down, and it's also in your notes.
All right. So now we're going to move on to the another area, which is peer observation of best practices. And like Laura said, it's not that you're moving from study of theory and best practice to peer observation of best practice. It's not linear. You might start out with observing and then go back and do some study of theory and best practice. So again, just a reminder that it's not linear. You're not going in order here. So, what I'd like for you to do now on the next slide is that we're going to look at and get you to think about personal experiences that you've had, whether it's observing others doing something, a best practice, or a new initiative that you wanted to see in practice and action. Or think of a time, if you're a coach or a teacher leader, times that you've set this opportunity up for those folks that you do coach. So, give you a minute just to think about that to connect to your prior knowledge about this topic. Okay, so now we're going to dig a little deeper in what this is talking about. And so I want to set this up. We're going to watch a video, but first I'm going to set this up for you just a little bit. So, unlike the study of theory where you would spend 20 to 30 hours learning about a theory or a new practice, this one is where you actually see it in action, like I said, and you're observing it in a real world situation, whether that be in person, where you're just going into another teacher's classroom, or whether it be that you're watching a YouTube video that we're getting ready to watch, where you just watched a teacher doing a best practice. And that's another opportunity to do that. So what we know about the benefits of this is that it really improves the teaching practice. It helps develop confidence in teachers, and it really kind of transforms their educational perspectives a lot of times. It also really helps us to really develop the camaraderie with our colleagues in the building. And a lot of times teachers are in their room with the door closed and don't have the opportunity to go and see what great things are going on in another room. So what we want to know is that this is not a peer observation is not a standalone practice. It should be included with opportunities to get feedback too. So you don't want to just say, okay, we're just going to observe as part of our coaching practice. You need to include getting feedback in that as well. And so how this would work is a teacher and a co-teacher would arrange a time that where they can go into each other's classroom. They would do this based on goals. So if I'm a teacher, I have goals that I'm setting for myself professionally. And so I want to go in and see this teacher teaching something that is one of the goals that I'm working on, that I'm trying to do, or it's a new practice and I'm wanting to see it in action. And so that it could be either way. So that could be something in literacy, it could be another content area, it could be co teaching, it could be behavior, or it could be a learning strategy. So, one of the things too is just to keep in mind that when you're doing this or setting this up for yourself or for your colleagues or those teachers that you coach, you want to make sure that you're sending them into classrooms where they're actually going to see best practices. You don't want them to go and see a teacher that is struggling to learn the new practice. It needs to be best practice. And if you can't find that, it's best for you not to send them in a room in a teacher's room. Then you're going to want to research and find videos that you can share with them to be able to have that experience. So now we're going to watch an example of the video. And what I want you to do is while you're watching that, think about how you could use this in your situation. So we'll learn more about observation.
Peer observation at Ipswich Girls Grammar School is the process whereby a teacher arranges to come in and spend some time in the classroom of another teacher looking at the strategies that are used within the class. We have a specific focus in that we're looking at lesson structure and particularly the articulation of lesson objective. When we started our quality teaching project, the first thing we did was quite an extensive literature review, and it was very clear from the literature that peer observation was one of the best strategies for professional development that we could provide for our staff. The teachers would have a short meeting before the lesson where they talk about what's going to happen in the lesson, what the objective is going to be, and how the lesson is going to flow.
Well, this is a grade 5 class, and our lesson today is teaching the children about how words are used by authors and readers to take meaning from different texts. I'm really keen to see how you explicitly give your objective to the class, and also your anticipatory set. That's something that I really want to focus on in my teaching.
So class, today's lesson, as you know, is about teaching and understanding tone and mood.
The teacher who's doing the observing goes in, he or she will have a little worksheet that they fill out. We call our peer observations VOTs, which is visit other teachers each term. And so the teacher is looking at, what did I see, what did I learn, what can I do to improve my own teaching as a result of what I've seen.
As we spoke about before the lesson, I was really keen to look at how you stated the objectives to the students and also the anticipatory set that you used. The anticipatory set, which was something that I was really interested in, was fabulous. The use of multimedia engaged the students straight away. The images that were used were fabulous. They were targeted right at the students' level. They were laughing along with the clips. They were really interested in the images that they were being shown. And certainly it introduced the lesson on tone and mood really well.
Do you think you could use this sort of thing in home economics?
Absolutely. While I was watching your lesson, I was thinking that how could I use this in my subject area? And I was thinking that the use of images would be perfect, particularly when we're doing a practical lesson. If we were making something like cupcakes, then I could show them some clips from maybe MasterChef or Cake Boss, showing them the production, showing them the end product, so they see what they're going to be doing in that lesson in short, sharp grabs, so their attention's gained straight away.
The response from teachers to peer observation has been very positive. I think as they've undertaken the observations, they've realised that this is a way that they really can pick up some new ideas, some new strategies, some different approaches, and it gives them an opportunity to actually see what happens, in someone else's classroom. So that's been very positive.
It's been fantastic, particularly for my own teaching. I've really been able to get some new teaching methodologies that maybe I'd had a few years ago that I'd forgotten to use. It's that real cross-fertilisation of looking at what someone else does and what they have success with, and then being able to implement that into your own classroom.
Implementing peer observations are challenging for all parties. Initially, teachers may feel hesitant about having somebody else in their classroom. Sometimes you can feel a little bit embarrassed. And just having an understanding that they're there not necessarily to judge you, but to watch what you do and take things from it in a positive way, has certainly helped people to overcome that fear or that concern about the agenda behind it all.
I think one of the most interesting things that we've learned is that teachers have so much to learn from one another, not just within their narrow subject areas or year levels, but from across the school. It's been a great way for us to showcase what we're doing as a school to improve the quality of our teachers and our teaching.
Peer observation changes the way I think about teaching by encouraging me to reflect more on my own practice and making sure that I am covering the steps that the quality teaching teams have shown us work better for student learning.
All right. So again, I want you to think back about the question that is on our slide, and Laura will navigate us back there in a minute. But I want you to think about, what did you see that you can add to this peer observation of practice to your situation? What I kind of noticed, and I'll tell you this, and then we will move on, is um, there, that was a fifth grade class, but the girl coming in to observe, the teacher coming in to observe, was in home economics. And you probably picked that up, but I did just want to point that out, that it doesn't have to be job alike teachers that you can learn from. So again, that's an important factor. And again, you notice that the person that was speaking, and it's like the narrator, she talked about when they really dug into the literature, that this was one of the things that really was impactful. But again, like I said earlier, it doesn't stand alone. You would have it in combination with the study of theory and then group coaching and one-on-one getting specific feedback. All right, and I think Laura is going to take us into the next part that we'll talk about with one-on-one.
Yes, so looking as we continue our learning of the continuum, another component is that one-on-one. And this is typically when we think about instructional coaching, this is what we think of. We think of one person coming in alongside another person to support their learning and development. So it's a traditional model, one-on-one coaching, but it really does benefit from the other two components. When we pair study of theory and practice and peer observation along with that one-to-one, or as Carol's going to explain later in this presentation around group coaching, you compare these other two components along with the support that a one-on-one coaching opportunity provides, as well as in a group coaching opportunity, and we really work through the continuum where it ebbs and flows into and through these other components. As you see that arrow, it's got two ends going both directions, so it's not a linear thing. It's a really more of a spiraling thing, that one thing can lead to another, and it's all for the purpose of growth and development. So looking now at our one-on-one coaching. So what are your experiences with one-on-one coaching, either being coached or coaching someone else? So take a moment and kind of think about and reflect on a coaching experience where someone's come alongside you to support either your learning or development of a skill or practice, or you as a coach partnering with someone to support their learning and development. So keeping that thought in mind, let's look at some of the research on what is one-on-one coaching. So it really does provide a teacher or teaching team, so if we're in a co-teaching situation, some more individualized support. So they really are anchored around goals that are co-constructed, really with the teacher at the center of that goal component. And we really unpack that component in our coaching basics course. And there's a lot of literature out there that you can extend that learning around setting goals for coaching. And you can contact us for more resources, and we'll have that information later in the presentation. But that one-on-one is really centered around a defined co-constructed goal. It's really individualized and tailored support. So it helps a teacher or co-teaching team gain understanding of a classroom practice and how that impacts student performance. So what's happening in the teacher instruction, the content, the delivery, pedagogy, all that kind of stuff that can become intertwined and are variables that impact student performance. So it's one person, another person coming alongside to kind of help unpack those elements and support that team. It increases self-awareness of classroom practice. So oftentimes we'll encourage creating a video of instruction, because there's no better reflection than a video to really show, what do I see? Because I can teach a lesson, and in my head and what I'm thinking, how that went could be one thing. I can either inflate that view, or I could see it skewed, where I see it in a way that's not truly reflective of, maybe I downplay it, or I see it as less than where it needs to be. So I can have a video to then play back and watch and reflect and support with another peer or a one-on-one coach to help me kind of see things rightly and find areas that are either points of pride, as Marcy Rock uses that description of points of pride, or points where I can grow or aim at improvement. So increase understanding of how classroom practice impacts the total school environment. So I can look at my work in conjunction with the total school and the work as a whole and how that all works together. So having that one-on-one coaching opportunity can really help bring insight and support our practice. We're going to see some opportunities of what that could look like during coaching. So some of the work that we do with PIPD is around what's called bug in ear. I didn't say buccaneer like the pirate. I said bug in ear. That's that Bluetooth device that we will sometimes engage in the moment feedback. And again, that feedback component is another concept that you want to really understand and unpack and develop a strong understanding, because it is a component of the coaching work, which we don't have time to unpack for you today. I'll provide that learning opportunity with Coaching Basics or other resources to help support that component. But you're going to see in this video example, in the moment feedback during instruction. I want you to keep in mind those two questions that you see on the screen. So did the teacher seem frustrated when hearing input from the coach? And did you notice if the student was impacted by what the coach said, the teacher's action? So keep those in mind as we watch this video. You have your note page there, and you can jot some notes down.
Good morning, class. Today we are going to practice blending words that have the middle letter A.
Okay, this is a phonemic awareness activity. You use the language of short vowel sound.
Each of you will have what we call a move it and say it board, and then you'll also have some blocks or cues that we will use to represent the letters and sounds.
Remember, this is phonemic awareness. You're using the letter sounds.
I'm going to model the first word for you. The first word is map. What word? Yes, map.
Okay, remember a consistent cueing system.
Watch me. I'm going to model the first word. Now I'm going to blend the word map.
Yeah, let's try one more practice to ensure we're using that consistent language. Remember, this is a phonemic awareness. We're using sounds, not letters. Okay. Try the word tap.
We're going to try another word. You're going to watch me this time. The word is tap. What word? Tap. Yes, tap. I'm going to move a block for each sound in the word tap. Now I'm going to touch each block for a sound in the word tap. Now I'm going to blend the word and say the word fast. Tap.
Use consistent language and modeling the procedure.
Okay, your turn. You're going to do it with me. Make sure all of your cubes are in the circle and your eyes are on me. We're going to do the word tap together. What word? Tap. Yes, tap.
Could use a gradual release. Now we're in the we do.
Get a cube or a block, and we're going to move it for each sound. Together. Now we're going to touch each sound. Now we're going to blend the sound to make the word. What word? Tap. Yes, tap. You did a great job with blending the word tap. Now we're going to try some different words with the ass sound. Some of the next words that we're going to be working on are the words stand, graph, and bland. Let's get started.
Let's start with some easier words. So you want to do 2 to 3 sounds and then move to the consonant blends and digraphs. Remember, you want to be careful of using the variant or welded sounds, that vowel A. So let's start with the words rat, sat, and cat, and give one word at a time to the student.
So the next word we're going to work on is the word rat. What word? Rat. Yes, rat.
So what we see here with the interaction, it's off-site. So I'm in my office and the teacher's in her building. So the nice thing about including some technology in the coaching work is that you can take some of those barriers away of time and
travel.
Thank you, travel. So having overcoming some barriers with using technology of reducing travel, having more time in a classroom because you're not in a car driving across the county or in the situation, the state, because we were in 2 different cities. Crystal was in one part of the state and I was in another, and I was able to come into her classroom and be part of that instructional moment where feedback can be exchanged. So this is an example of in-ear coaching where the coach is offsite and engaging and providing feedback in the moment to an instructor or a teacher. So think about some of the interactions that you've had. Have you engaged in anything similar? It also could be what we hear in the research as elbow coaching, where you're on site in the same classroom, maybe sitting side by side and providing that feedback or information that helps support the instruction. Or it could be modeling. There's a number of things that can happen with a one-on-one situation that provides support in the moment, like this example, or you can be offsite or in the classroom providing that support. So some experiences that we've had, Carol and I both have engaged in this work, and we like asking the question, what was that like? We've both received and delivered feedback via that Bluetooth device, and oftentimes folks that are not familiar with this often ask that question, well, what was it like? So we have some firsthand experiences to share with you. So this is a teacher in the Western region who had part of the coaching collaborative, received in-ear coaching, and this is her reflection.
Carla even asked me to be on the team. I got to be coached by Dr. Marcy Rock, and I think she was in Greensboro at the time. And so I was doing a reading lesson in the class, so I got to experience being the coachee, I guess what you could say, with the bug in the ear. And I just remember originally when Carla asked me to do that, I thought, okay, how am I supposed to keep up with someone talking to me and do the lesson? I don't know how this is going to work, but I did it, and it was just a phenomenal experience. It was just like, driving down the road, and then, your GPS comes on and tells you there's an accident up ahead. So it reroutes you a different way so that you can still make your destination. And I just remember thinking that whenever she would suggest something or give me some type of feedback, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I can go that way. That's a good idea. Or even like if I had a student that was off task and she would say something about making sure to include them in the group, I could remember to do that. So I thought it was fabulous that way. So I got to see it on both ways.
And she's now a teacher and coach in her system and supports program and coaching.
Before Carla even asked.
And Carol, if you'd like to introduce?
Yes, I would. Thanks, Laura. So what we'll see on this one is as an EC coach in my previous district, and at that time she was teaching in the classroom, and so she was coached by Dr. Marcy Rock, and this was the first time she had ever had that experience. And again, like Laura said, people always ask us, what is it like? And you'll get to hear her insights on what having somebody coaching her was like.
It felt very comfortable. It was not obtrusive to have someone whisper, but I think what helped was that someone was watching the lesson with me. So there was that interaction, but without it being obtrusive into the children's learning. So I did feel it was beneficial.
How did it physically feel?
It didn't bother me, and I'm not a person that wears Bluetooth, so I wasn't sure how that was going to feel, but it really, it wasn't uncomfortable at all.
When you first started, what were your initial thoughts when you heard Marcy's voice?
It felt kind of strange, it's kind of like that little conscience on your shoulder, right? And speaking to you. Once you got used to it, it was very natural, and I think it helped that she was kind of interacting not with the children, but she could see the children's interactions, so she could help me respond more appropriately to them.
So when you were thinking initially when she first spoke to you, did it take you just a minute?
It did, because I had to kind of stop what I was doing, where I was thinking what I'm going to teach next, kind of process what she had said, how am I going to integrate that to make it work. So it does take a moment to get used to that.
Yeah.
I think an extended period of time would be hard, but I think for short bits of time, it was beneficial.
So I want to just you heard what Jennifer talked about there and how that felt and what it was like and how long did it take her to get adjusted to hearing what the coach said. And so I will tell you that it was like after the coach had given her 5 different things to try, she was also giving her positive feedback as well when she talked about that it was encouraging. But it took about 5 times, and then Jennifer looked like she had been doing this all her life, having somebody talking through the Bluetooth device in her ear. So it is a very quick getting used to time as far as processing that. But it was also good she said, to hear the positive comments to know that she was on the right track too. So that's one thing. Again, um, that's just one form of coaching, which is the bug in ear or in ear coaching. You could also do, like Laura said, the elbow coaching. And the important thing here is the feedback. They're getting the feedback in real time in the classroom so that it does impact the students. Instead of coming back later and having a conference at the end, the students are gone. The opportunity to help a child understand something, that moment is lost. So that's what the great thing about one-on-one coaching in real time is the great benefit of that.
Yeah, it's like Dr. Rock terms at the point of performance. So you have an opportunity, like Carol mentioned, right there in the moment as it's happening to adjust and provide that clarity that just might be the point of performance for that student that's going to make the difference of them acquiring a skill or a set of knowledge. So it's pretty powerful.
Yes, thanks, Laura. All right, so now we're going to move into the last area that we'll talk about with the continuum. And again, it's not following these in order, it's not linear. But the one that we'll talk about now is group coaching. And so, group coaching, some of you might have had some experiences with that. And I'm going to let you think about that. First of all, group coaching links professionals together to make their work more effective. This coaching opportunity can be formal, it can be informal, it can include peers with a common interest or people from a different organization who just want to collaborate to increase effectiveness. So, what I'd like for you to do is think about experiences or some knowledge that you have about group coaching. And I will add that, a PLC or professional learning community can be a group coaching if it is set up that way. Another one that you might have heard about is instructional ground rounds, and one is called critical friends or booster sessions. So based on that, what is your experience or knowledge do you have with group coaching? So give you a minute to think about and connect to your prior experiences before we dig in a little deeper. Okay, I hope you've had enough time to connect to your prior knowledge about this. But if not, again, you can always pause us and give that some more thought. And we'll go on to the next slide. We'll really kind of dig a little deeper into this group coaching and what it is. And so we'll think about what it is. And Laura, if we'll go ahead and we'll talk about two different ones. And we'll go on to the next slide. One is a critical friends group, which you heard me mention when I listed those. Critical friends group. These are teachers, practitioners, administrators, coaches, support personnel. It could be across the grade level. It could be across disciplines, like we saw with the video of the home ec teacher observing the fifth grade teacher. And what they're going to do is they can be in the same building, they could be in the same district or not. They could be across the state, like Laura mentioned before about the one on one coaching. And what they do is the teacher or the co teacher present a student work, they present a student behavior, or they pose an essential question to the group. The group members then take turns questioning and forming hypotheses around about the learning or the behavior or the problem of practice that the teacher has brought forward. The goal of the critical friends group is around reflection, and it's around action, and it's around feedback, with all of those things working to improve student and teacher performance. So that's what the critical friends group is, and that's the structure of that. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about instructional or ground rounds that I mentioned earlier. So instructional ground rounds are, again, just like the critical friends group, where it's the practitioners, it's the teachers, the coaches, the support personnel, the administrators. They come together to form a group to, again, look at something. So we get this idea of instructional ground rounds, which you might have already figured out. It originated in the medical field, where the physicians are honing in on their skills and knowledge, and they're doing rounds in medical school. Any of you that have been in the hospital or have had a loved one in one of our teaching hospitals, you know all these groups come in and they're following the doctor around, and they're listening and they're learning by what the doctor says. And that's kind of the setup here. And so it's a kind of an inquiry based method. They have a problem of, usually typically the teacher brings a problem of practice. They then she also has her group to come around, her instructional ground round group, to come around and watch the problem in action, or watch her teaching, or him teaching a certain content area, or maybe it's a new strategy that they're trying. And the goal of the rounds is not to fix the teacher, but it's to understand what's happening in that classroom, and then help the teacher problem solve and hold each other accountable. And so that's kind of the aim of that. So it's a group of teachers coming in to observe and take some data of what this teacher's doing, the problem or an issue or a new strategy that the teacher is implementing, and she's wanting some feedback and support for. So we're going to do something a little different on this particular slide. I ask you to think about, had you had any experiences with group coaching, and listed critical friends group and instructional or grand rounds, as it's called. You might have had experience with one of these, or you might not have had any experience with either of these. But what we're going to do now is going to personalize the learning for you here. We are going to let you decide, self-select based on your prior experience or your interest or your needs. Which one of these would you like to know more about? Would you like to know more about critical friends group, or would you like to know more about instructional or ground rounds, as it's called? You can decide. In your link that you were sent with this email, with the link for this video, there was also a Google folder link, and it had handouts for you. So if you don't have those handy, if you will, go ahead and pause the video and get those available. So there are two different handouts, one for instructional or grand rounds, and one is for critical friends group. And so at this time, you are going to decide which one of those that you want to learn more about. And you're going to click on that handout that is in that Google folder that was shared with you. Okay? So then, give you another minute to find that. Again, just go ahead and pause it. And when you open up that document, you are going to select either one article or one video. You get to decide. There's only one article on each, but there are multiple videos. And out beside each, there's a description and length of time for the video. One of the videos is really long, but the introduction gives a lot of vital information. Now, the beauty of this is that you can select one now and then select another later. But for our purposes now, we're going to give you 5 minutes to either read one article on instructional ground rounds or one video on instructional ground rounds, whichever one of those topics you choose. Later, you can explore and do further study on any of this. You will have access to this. So now we're going to start the timer and give you time, once you open that document, to decide whether you're going to read the article or watch a video. We'll see you back in about 5 minutes. Please, if you will, go ahead and decide which one you're going to do and if it's going to be an article or a video to do your learning.
And then go ahead and engage in that learning opportunity during these 5 minutes that will count down on the screen.
So I hope that you got to spend some time learning about your self-selection on instructional grand rounds or critical friends group. Just a reminder, you can certainly pause the video now and spend more time right now learning about either both or just one of those. Many districts have had and heard of instructional rounds before, and many use that. So it could be that this might have been the first time that you've heard of Critical Friends Group. And so again, if you already have something set up in your district with instructional grand rounds, there's no need to add a different form of that, which is Critical Friends Group. So the important thing, as long as you are providing some group coaching. Another thing that I'd like to kind of remind you about is that we mentioned before that PLCs are a form of, can be a form of group coaching. But what I want to just remind you about too is that what we know from research is that a more structured group like Critical Friends Group or instructional or ground rounds, because it is structured, is usually more effective. A lot of times in our professional learning communities, we will come together and we'll talk about what are we going to teach next or what are we going to do on this field trip, but we really won't give each other feedback on a problem of practice. So if a PLC is set up where you give each other feedback on a problem of practice or a situation in a classroom that you want some feedback on, then it can be effective, but it needs to be more structured. One of the critical things that I do want to tell you about group coaching is this. We talked about one-on-one coaching and that specific feedback that in the moment, right when the student is struggling, the teacher then can get feedback to try something different. That's a great thing. But sometimes if we only do that one-on-one coaching and we don't provide this group coaching, then teachers become dependent on the coach. In other words, they're not reflecting, they're not problem solving on their own. They're waiting for the coach to tell them whether it's in their ear, as you saw in the video examples, or whether it's just having a conversation after a lesson, or elbow coaching. I'm talking during your lesson sitting beside you. So with the Critical Friends group and the instructional grand rounds, that is an opportunity where practitioners, teachers, principals, leaders can get together and to problem solve that without the input of a coach. And they're going to continue to grow and reflect even when it's between the visits of the coach where they're getting that specific one-on-one feedback. So that's one of the critical components of the group coaching. And now we're going to talk just a little bit about some general guidelines for differentiating the use. So we've talked to you about all the components of the continuum, the study of theory and best practice. We've talked to you about peer observation of best practice. We've talked to you about one-on-one coaching. We've talked to you about group coaching. And so how do we know when to use that? When is one-on-one coaching the best? Well, when a teacher is learning new content, right? And they don't know, they really want some feedback on, am I doing it well? Am I doing this right? I really want you to come in and watch. I'm trying out these new questioning techniques, but I'm really not sure and I really need some feedback. Or I want to see if I'm on the right track. So I want some really positive feedback and encouraging feedback and some constructive feedback. Maybe I'm trying a new strategy or a new intervention. And so I really need that support when I'm trying it out. So again, think back to the slide about the Joyce and Showers data about the transfer to the classroom. A teacher getting that one-on-one feedback helps them to transfer that to the classroom when they're first trying something out. All right. So our next one is talking about group coaching. Well, when would you want to use group coaching? Well, it's when you've already kind of learned the content or the new strategy or the new intervention, but you're really wanting to fine tune it. You're really wanting to polish it up and to get it better. And that's one of the times that you're going to call in a group and say, hey, this is my problem of practice, whether they're just going to talk about it and give me some solutions, or whether they're going to actually come in my classroom, like the instructional or grand rounds, and watch me and collect some data for me and then give me some feedback later. And then with our peer observation of best practice, that can be included in any case when you're learning a new content or whether you are really trying to fine tune a particular content or strategy. And so those can be used at either time. One that is not on the screen, and I just want to make sure that we talk about that again, is the study of theory and best practice. So in between, whether I might decide that, I've been doing this a while, but I really, really want some more specific feedback, even though I'm not trying something new. Maybe I'm kind of at a lull, or maybe my outcomes have dipped and are not as high as they were. I might request a coach to come in and give me some one-on-one feedback. But in between the times that the coach comes, or in between the time that the group meets, or in between the time that I'm watching a video of best practice or going in a classroom, as a professional, I could be reading and studying and learning about that new strategy or new content or new intervention, just like we had you to do on for the critical friends group or the instructional or grand rounds. You were reading about something, and then you can go back and study and learn more from the two handouts that we shared with you. The same goes with whatever practice you're trying in your classroom. In between time, you should be reading on your own and studying that to become better and have a better understanding of that new content. So even though study of theory and best practice is not on the slide, it is still a vital part of the continuum. All right. Anything you want to add on that, Laura?
No, I think you covered it well. It's just remembering that this continuum, again, we've said it many times, it's not linear. You're going to move through all these different components dependent on what is the goal, what is our data looking towards, what are we moving to ensure student outcomes, positive outcomes for students. So keeping all that in mind, how do we grow our skill and practice? And what's going to be the best vehicle to do that. It could be the study of theory and practice. It could be one-on-one group or peer observation. So remembering that it's not a one and done, but it's elements of all components working connectedly for an outcome. So that brings us to our last and final example here that kind of pulls it all together. So Carol's going to explain more of what this all looks like in application, looking at the work in the light of foundations of math.
Thanks, Laura. And yes, so what I'd like for you to do on this slide, and it is kind of small, but I want to talk you through that. So first of all, I don't want you to look at the first three columns right now, the data sources, strengths, and areas of growth. I want you just to focus on the right-hand side. You'll see that we have study, then we have observe, which is that peer observation of best practice. Then we have coach one-on-one. And then finally, we have coach peers. Again, like Laura said, you don't have to do these in order, but what you do need to do is we know that to be effective, coaching needs to include all parts of the continuum, not leaving any out. And so what we have here is what we call a worked example. And so this is just to kind of show you to connect to how have we done that. So now I want to take you to the left-hand side. This session, we are not talking to you about giving feedback today. We did mention that that's what you do in one-on-one coaching, and that's what you get when you're group coaching, but we didn't talk to you a whole lot about details about feedback. Again, we do have the one-day professional development called Coaching Basics. So if you wanted to dig more into that, and also the in-ear coaching modules that we shared with you at the beginning of this presentation would be a way for you to learn more about feedback. But what we've done here is we have taken data that we have done with the teacher and we've used that. And this is based on the foundations of math and an observation there. So we've done a fidelity check on did the teacher use what they should have been taught in foundations of math to transfer to the classroom. This example is for our instructors. So we do another tool called high quality professional development. So that doesn't really applicable to teachers, but it does show a great example. And then the instructor was given specific positive feedback about their strengths in the middle column. And then, like Laura said, the feedback and the study and the observation and the one-on-one coaching and the group coaching is based on goals that the teacher would have set, whether it be co-constructed with a coach and the teacher, or the teacher already came in knowing, hey, I want to work on this. And this is what I want you to be focusing on when you come in my classroom, when you set me up with observations, when you help me connect with peers to discuss my problem of practice. And then you'll notice in the third column, there are areas for growth. So based on the data collected, these were some things that the teacher needed to grow on. And so based on that, now the coach has made some suggestions on what the teacher needed to do. So in this case, the teacher was going to study some instructor notes. So this one was an instructor of our course. So the instructor would need to go back and study specific instructor notes. They can watch a video that was created. So that would be an observe, but it's also a study. So see, some of these are kind of overlap, right? Then they would then present it. And then a suggestion is video themselves and review that themselves and take some notes. And then submit that feedback to a DPI consultant. So again, have some peer things. And then the next one under study, they're asking for a peer to come in and ask some questions and provide opportunities for feedback and for practice. In the observe section, we asked this instructor who set this up as a learning opportunity for this instructor to go and observe a consultant or a regional coach deliver that content, and then to have a debriefing afterwards, kind of like the video you guys saw of the home ec teacher watching the 5th grade teacher. And then they talked about it afterwards. The next one is one-on-one coaching. So then the instructor would then co-teach with a consultant or regional coach and get some specific feedback specifically on the area of proportional reasoning that this instructor struggled with. And then finally, there's a group peers. Having a group discussion with other instructors around the topic, or bring for them to bring, this is my area that I'm struggling with. Can you talk me through this? Or maybe even, can you ask some questions and help me to be able to respond better to questions of the participants in the course? So again, you'll see that these are examples. We know the areas that this instructor needed to work on, and then each area, study, observe, coach one-on-one, and peer coaching, had areas related to that topic as the focus. And so we hope that this visual helps you to kind of see, to transfer this to your work. So it could be that you had only been doing, and Laura had a slide about this earlier, which of the areas of the continuum have you been doing? The most known one is the one-on-one coaching, like Laura mentioned and talked about. But you may be not doing some of these, but now we hope that you will see the importance of making sure that you add all of the areas of the continuum to your coaching work.
So as part of our practice of the continuum, we want to support you in continuing your learning opportunity, extend beyond this time together and this recorded session, and engage in some of the resources and research that's out there. One that we continually draw from is the work of Dr. Marcy Rock at UC Greensboro. She has a book out through ASCD, the E-Coaching Continuum for Educators. And it really just explains that opportunity of engaging with technology and pairing technology to enhance the work of coaching and the use of the continuum. So everything that we shared today, you can dive deeper into those concepts utilizing that resource. And Coaching Basics, if you want to connect and receive a full day professional development credit. Coaching Basics is one that we really unpack more of the continuum and then add in those components like Carol mentioned, feedback and relationship building, really core concepts to coaching that are critical if we're aiming for impact. So we have that professional learning opportunity available across the state, regionally offered, as well as statewide at EC Conference and Summer Institute in the past that has appeared there. So as that's available to you, we encourage you to take part in those sessions. In-ear coaching modules, there again is the online modules in earcoaching.com, developed by Dr. Marcy Rock and her team of researchers at UNC Greensboro. Great modules that really take the components of the continuum in coaching and break them down into chunks, and a great learning opportunity there. In addition, we welcome you to see the resources that we utilize. So these resources are available, but these are the resources that we used to grow in our knowledge and then help inform our professional learning. So they are here for you as well as a reference list. So we encourage you to go right to the source and learn directly from the researchers. So we thank you for coming together with us in this learning opportunity. Our email addresses are there. So I'm Laura Marsden, Literacy Consultant for Western Region. My email is laura.marsden@dpi.nc.gov.
And again, I'm Carol Moffitt. I support the Northeast, the Southeast, and North Central with math, and then statewide for coaching and for recruitment and retention. And my email is carol.moffitt@dpi.nc.gov. We really thank you for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.